Yeah. Damodar,
Yes, sir.
please start.
Yes. Now all the participants are welcome back to the second session of the Day 2 of Atal Academy Online Faculty Development Program. In the first session, we exposed to the network analysis by our expert, Mr. S. Vakis. Now the second session, I would request Asmit to introduce our expert and proceed with our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's an honor to have been given the chance to introduce our expert, Engineer Neeraj Kumar Chaube. Engineer Neeraj completed his BTech from NIT Jamshedpur and subsequently did his MTech in Construction Technology and Management from IIT Madras. Then he went on to complete his postgraduate executive management program from SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. Since then, he has been working on numerous projects involving his expertise of project management, construction management, design coordination, contract management, project monitoring, and control. He currently holds a key position in L&T Construction as Senior Engineering Manager. And he has been involved in numerous projects throughout the country. And his achievements cannot be summarized in such short spells. So, without further ado, I would request Engineer Neeraj sir to come up and deliver his talk on work breakdown structure and critical path method. Sir, please.
Good morning, everybody. So I'll be starting with the presentation. So I understand since you guys have been going through this program from yesterday, I guess 26th, and it is the day 2. So most of the topic might be repeating because for my presentation, what I have done is I have tried to include some of the general concepts and then dig specifically into the topic of concern. So we'll request everybody to bear me, even if it's repeating. We'll try to make it a bit interactive, and we'll request any questions if you guys have to be. We can have either you can interrupt me in between and I can answer, or we can have this question and answer session summarized at the end. What would guys prefer? Asmit?
Sir, I think they can put their questions in the chat box while the presentation is continuing, and we can address them after the presentation is completed.
Okay. Then
Is it
I'll
alright?
start. Yeah, it's all right, but I actually I have been in a habit of making presentation a bit interactive. So my methodology involves asking few questions and then interaction gets a bit more involved.
That would be a
But
good
no
idea.
issues.
So we can do that. Yes, sir. We can.
Okay. Okay, then we'll continue with this methodology that I'll be
Please.
I'll be raising questions to the audience, and
Yes,
based
sir.
on the response, we'll take it up forward. Okay, so when we hear the word construction planning and management, what comes to our mind? What is the management actually? Can anybody tell me? What is the management, what we do in construction management?
Please interact with the expert.
So we try to optimize the resources.
Okay, so there is one thing
Sir,
called
may I?
resource management. Yeah, there is resource management.
So all the resources we have available to us, like the building materials, maybe the labor, and we try to optimize it so that we achieve the deadline of the project in the least possible time and have the effective cost of the project.
Yes, there resource management is there. Then time management comes. Then cost management comes. Then risk, ensued risk comes. So in order to summarize, what we see is it is very complex, and the management involves time, safety, quality, planning, execution, contract, risk, CPM, tender, consultant, schedule, monitoring. Everything is a part of management only. CPM is a technique. Everything else is part of management. Even consultant we have to manage or take services of. So the agenda for this session would be primarily three-folded. First is basics of project management, then WBS, then CPM. CPM we call it critical path method. So planning, is it really required? When we ponder into these questions, we are bound to have so many questions. What is planning? Why is planning? When do we do planning? How do we do planning? So, can anybody tell what is planning? Planning is primarily, let me answer. Planning is primarily managing the project with the right resource, in the right time, in right manner. So whatever resource we use, be it equipment, be it manpower, be it labor, everything has got certain cost uh, attached to it. So that has to be done optimally. The more optimum we do any execution or anything, the benefit to the project increases, because everything is limited. And why is it required? That is because why is it planning required? Construction planning and management, why is it required? Anybody? Okay. So the purpose of planning is everything has to be in control. And if we do not happen to control things in the start, things go out of control. And when things go out of control, it cannot be managed, because the basic principle of any management is have things what you can manage, because for that only everybody is here at site or offices, primarily to manage these things, keep the wheel going. So for keeping the wheel going requires its proper lubrication, making the path ahead of it clear. So everything needs to be thought well in advance before execution, because it cannot be you start into execution and then you modify or redefine the parameters. Your parameters and everything is fixed right from the start. And further, everybody will appreciate any company or anybody who starts with a construction or any project has certain assumption in the start over which the estimates are built up. And this estimate is what governs the cost of the project and the cost at which it is going to be delivered. And the cost definitely matters, because this is where everybody's margin and even the efficiency matters. When I answered, because when is the at the earliest, we'll see later in my presentation that any issues, if pointed out later, will not be able to control, because everybody, every activity, everything what happens has certain cost uh, attached to it. And that cost, if it goes well beyond a limit, it cannot be managed. Then the cost manages you. You are not managing cost, the cost manages you. And for the cost, schedule is also important. If things are not getting in correct manner, then everything goes haywire. How 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 we can say simply that there are various tools by which we can manage, and there are regular follow-ups, this clarity of ideas. These all things is what planning is comprised of. So I'll get into a bit more detail what I was telling. The whole project we can divide it into 4 phases. One is specification phase, second is bid phase, third is scheduling phase, fourth is construction phase. So in specification phase is the phase wherein all assumptions, everything comes into play, because we arrive at a particular cost based on the specification, and the specifications are very important. You can very well see even if we construct a house, 1 BHK or 2 BHK house, uh, the rates vary. The rates vary with respect to the quality of finishing, what we do, the architecture, the facade. So, and corresponding to that, our cost comes. Cost and schedule, everything are integrated. So, it clearly establishes that specification governs the cost. So, the general process is based on the acceptability and the working style and the experience and the knowledge. People decides on the specification of the project, and corresponding to that specification, drawings and other accessories are built up. Then we move on to bid phase, because generally the projects are a bit high value items. So what we do is we have to give equal opportunity to other players. So the more the player comes in, the more competitive the project becomes. And for the owner, it is beneficial that the project comes at an optimum cost and optimum time. So for that, this bid phase is important. So depending on the specification what we receive, this bidding documents are prepared. Then corresponding to bid is primarily the final outcome which is required and the conditions. So those sort of specifications combined with bid then moves on to scheduling phase. Once we are firm with our requirement, what we want, when we want, how we want, then we go into scheduling. The scheduling is the phase wherein we decide on how we are going to do it at an optimum cost, because everything happens in a sequential manner. So for that, everything the backup needs to be there. If we are going to start with any construction activity, we need to have the equipment, the required materials, the resources, everything at well in advance at the site. We should not keep waiting for these things to arrive to get on with further works. So once that, and further, everybody requires things to be go in a particular manner so that it can be monitored very well. So for monitoring, we have this schedule. Schedule is primarily the baseline. Means it serves to give a baseline for the project team to execute, so that everyone gets the desired outcome at a particular interval. And what is the benefit of getting the desired outcome at a particular interval? Can anybody in audience? Okay, let me get back. The desired outcome for means once we should reach the schedule, we get what invoices we'll receive in a particular interval. And once that invoices schedule is ready, then we get into the cash flow, means how our project is going to be worked on. So, and corresponding to that, the project finance is worked out. So from where to get the money, because you might have been going through one session on finance management also, I guess, for as a part of this FDP, wherein you will understand that uh, it is it is always better to manage the project from the invoice that has been generated from the project itself, instead of pumping your own money, because pumping your own money involves a lot of cost attached to it, and the interest what you receive or what you lose is a matter of concern. So everybody is very much interested in having it from the client itself. So what money we receive, I'll try to pump that only in the project. So corresponding to this, actually, previously there used to be certain conditions like client will give the invoice to contractor's account directly, then things will move on. But now, what has been done in current construction industry is we go for escrow account. Escrow account is sort of a joint account wherein contractor and client, they are party to it. In this, what they do is this common account, when any bill is certified, that is put into this escrow account, and the contractor can only take money corresponding to the requirement of the project. So that requirement he has to justify, and then he can withdraw the money for the further use. So that sort of changes have come in India also. Previously, this formatting or this thing was applicable for contracts, wherein due to arbitration or reconciliation, anything, perhaps due to arbitration only, wherein there was lot of amount in suspension, wherein certain claim is admissible to a contractor, but that claim was not given. So in the interest of project progress, it has been the arbitration law has been systematized in such a way that now what happens once the claim is finalized, this common account is created, and the value or the invoice is parked there, and everybody, once contractor is also happy that he is having access to the money, and even client is happy that even though he has given the money, the contractor is in his control, that whenever things are required to be done, he can do it, and that money is reserved for the project, so he cannot use it elsewhere. So that way both the interests are conserved. Okay, then moving on to construction phase. Once this schedule is ready, it goes to execution. For execution, what is important is we need to have this specification and the schedule together to serve as a guide or to monitor. Then once that comes, then it goes into construction, then inspection, because everything has to be up to the mark, and uh, any non-conformity has to be removed or corrected. And then once that is done, then we go into completion. So this is the entire project life cycle, you can say, wherein any project goes. So this is what I have been telling in the start. The typical cost and staffing level, you can very well see during initial phase, everybody is just mobilizing. Things are building up. And once we reach a particular threshold level, then we get into this intermediate phase wherein everything is geared up or synchronized. And then once this goes into final phase, we start with demobilizing. So same thing happens for cost also. Initial phase, since everything we are incurring cost, it gets built up, and then it reaches to a particular break-even point, after which it goes down. Similarly, the importance, while I was discussing with the importance of planning, we were discussing about the cost of changes and the impact of time with respect to planning. So if you can very well see when the project progresses, the cost of changes increases, because you can very well imagine, for example, you have been given a project to build a 3-story building. So, and you observe that there is issue with lift. So you have not given or allocated proper space for lift or something. Then until when you are at the first ground floor, you have the full, you can say, very less cost impact in introducing this new element and have your further design built up. But if you have reached the second floor, and that time you intend to have lift provision in this building, then it is going to be very costly affair. You can very well imagine that you have to have this duct planned proper, then that duct, because you have already casted your slab, everything, that needs to be cut, then this wall needs to be made, then perhaps you would have planned your first floor in a particular layout, that layout will be changing. Once that layout changes, the impact on the utilization or the utility will be changing. So there are n number of changes or this costly affairs which will be triggered by a single change of it. Similarly, like this influence of stakeholders. Okay, can we get names of stakeholders for a project? 2, 3 names? Anybody in the audience? Who are the stakeholders in a project?
Sir, when we talk about the stakeholders, it is the party who's creating the project, it is the party who's getting the project built up, and the people who are investors into the project.
Yes, these are the stakeholders, but apart from it, there are other stakeholders also, like what we call it, the peoples who are affected, the nearby people. For example, when we build a dam, it is not to a particular owner or a particular contractor. It has the impact on almost everything. And further, the receivers of the service. For example, we are building a dam for the water transmission or drinking water shifting. So the guys who are getting the water are also party to it, because if we have committed a particular capacity to for them to deliver, if something happens and it is getting reduced, so nobody will be happy. And further, since the guys who had been there on a particular land, occupying it for more than a, you can say, generation, we are vacating them. They are also a stakeholder because they will like to have minimum displacement. So in view of this, everybody is connected, and the stakeholders list uh, grows a bit more multifolded. Okay. So now we'll get into deep into this techniques. So let's have from the audience, what do we need to manage in construction projects?
Sir, man, machinery, and manpower.
Man, machinery, and manpower. Yeah, these are the vital things. In terms of you can say costing, and as a jargon in construction industry, we call it LMPO, labor, material, plant, overheads. So in overheads, it's part of cost also, you can say, as well as the main constraint of it is the man, material, machinery. Okay, then what are the basic tools available for managing this? So I guess everybody is aware of bar charts. Bar chart is one of the very simplest tools by which we can manage the projects in terms of the progress, what is required, and where we stand. And further, uh, it can be something like your resource deployment for a period. The bar chart can be for the project progress also, for the resource utilization also. Everything is integrated. Then comes CPM technique. Can anybody tell me what is the difference between CPM and bar chart? CPM, we call it critical path method. Okay, we'll get into this during the further course of my presentation. Then there is called PERT technique. but I guess everybody would have some exposure, project evaluation and review technique. Then it's the simulation. I understand the previous session, Mr. Mr. Vikesh was primarily describing about this simulation. Okay, can we have why is simulation required? Means what is it in the project that makes it to go for simulation? Anybody?
So the uncertainty of the project or the events might occur during the course of the project.
Overall cost and time.
Mhm. Overall cost and time. Then the second point was complexity of the project. Okay. So I'll tell you the main reason is the complexity of the project. What happened? The various factors or the parameters what we had been discussing in the previous slide of mine. These are these seems to be independent, but when time comes, these gets interrelated. Everything is interrelated. So when this interrelationship is not that complex or complicated to be checked or assessed by the above technique, then we go for this simulation. Because in this, there are many variables, the parameters, relationship, anything happens, our delay in schedule leads to the delay in delivery of that services. The delivery of services are in turns related to augmenting a particular structure. For example, in airport, if we see, or any project, okay, let me quote example for airport. Or no, let me be specific to my project. For example, we are going to build a tunnel. Then tunnel is having one deadline, and after civil works, we have to go for this railway tracks. But in tunneling, if we happen to have certain conditions wherein this the tunnel follows a different alignment, because tunneling is primarily governed by the geology. And if our geology is suitable, then the things as per planned happens. Actually, just to go out of context, I just like to explain the audience a bit about the this complexity in tunneling, which is a bit different from other you can say structures. Other structures we go with the defined parameters for the investigations. We do investigations and we have all the required parameters with us for designing that. And corresponding to that design, the structure is made up. The chances of uncertainty in other open structures are very less. But when it comes to underground or let it be tunneling, here what happens is everybody goes for a because the extent of investigation required for the particular tunneling is very extreme, very huge. And because everything has a specific project duration in terms of investigation also, in terms of proposal also, and in terms of construction also. So the time available with any agency is limited. So the investigations and further the complexity of geography. For example, if you have to investigate to complete hills, if it would have been in a field, you have a fixed drilling parameters or fixed equipments, fixed instruments, which can predict the behavior up to great accuracy. But when it comes to a place where you can not even climb, you cannot even go to the point from where you want to assess the conditions. So that way you have to go into certain assumption or certain prescription based on the similar exposure what expert would have faced. So we go with a we can say a suggestion or assumptions for tunneling, and based on that, the design of tunneling is done, and that is very at a very you can say at a very big scale. So, but when you get into actual tunneling, the actual ground profile what you receive is a bit different. So in that case, there are many chances that you may have to go with a higher cross section or a certain uh, calibration modification to be done for the profile. So corresponding to that is certain something what I was discussing previously. If certain we get a very weak zone and everything is hampered, so we will miss the deadlines. So now coming back to simulations. So if we have this data regularly available with us, then we can definitely simulate things and get into uh, how how it will behave in a particular manner, how tunnel will behave when this type of geology comes, when this type of things come, and get it updated corresponding to the actual one. So that way, this simulation and these things will help. Okay. Now, getting more into the tools, what constitutes the construction plan? This we already discussed. So I understand resources we discussed, methodology a bit to a conceptual level we discussed. The other important things what we have not discussed is any plan comprises of activity, duration, and relationship. So planning steps. So the general planning steps, what we do for a particular schedule and what we have been doing is primarily define the WBS. WBS, we call it as work breakdown structure. The purpose, okay, let's have from the audience, what is the purpose of WBS? Why we have to monitor at WBS?
Sir, in the WBS, since we are breaking the different project activities, so we are trying to, exercise a better control over the work progress and for monitoring the progress of work.
Correct, correct, correct. Because if you see any project, if we are controlling at a very task level, for example, we have to build a structure. For example, consider our case of tunnel on tunnel. If we have to get into this retaining, getting into portal works or getting into tunnel itself. So if we monitor very minute activities like this blasting, then blasting, defuming, then mucking. So if we get into that level for monitoring project, then there are going to be around more than 1,000 activities. For example, in our project itself, the schedule what I made for this project, we have got something around 1,000 activities. So if I get into monitoring these 1,000 activities, it will not lead me anywhere. So I have to be specific and be specific for the levels at which I want to monitor. So that level, we call it as WBS. It can be something like, or it can be something like if uh, we have to have a complete project. You can have it in another sense as if I am building a project, then I have to monitor it at certain levels. I have to divide it into certain parts. So that certain parts we call it as WBS. That certain structures we call it as WBS. So once we define that WBS, then we get into defining the duration of the activity then obtaining relationship between activities. So we'll get into further depth. So this is what we discussed. The work breakdown structure is something wherein we divide it into manageable activities for better resource allocation and monitoring. The key feature is it can be controlled, progress can be seen, means wherever you want to visualize it. For example, take a case of retaining wall. You can very well see your wall has reached 3 meter, 5 meter. So that way, the what progress you want, you can see it. Then consisting of smaller tasks. That's what we discussed. Then there is a relationship called parent and child. Because if you have to monitor at parent level, then child is automatically taken care of. So the general recommendation for WBS is it must be comprehensive and there should not be any gaps in job logic. This we can very well understand. For example, 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So means if the subparts of that WBS should complete the project. For example, if I am taking this tunnel primarily comprises of two major parts, excavation and lining. Two major things. In excavation, if we go further deep, it comprises of your drilling, blasting, scaling, mucking, then hauling. So this 5 activities completes the cycle, but I cannot monitor at these activity level. I have to do it as excavation level. Then further getting into, we can say this WBS as per the engineering activities, it can be it can be broadly divided into engineering activities, pre-construction activities, procurement, mobilization, and closeout. These primarily comprises of further tasks like inspection. Closeout comprises of inspection, housekeeping, documentation. Mobilization comprises of what? Equipment, labor, resource, homework. This way it can be dealt. With this, I used to have for the session, but this will skip. Okay, now I'll come to introduce the various tools what we have for the project monitoring. So the first one is Gantt chart. So in Gantt chart, we have around 3 activities. So you can see depending on the level what we want to monitor it, we can have this in weeks, days, hours. So for example, this particular we can have 3 activities and the corresponding duration can be plotted. So this form of plotting what we do, we call it as Gantt chart. Gantt chart is in use since very long, and before this CPM, it was of very involved use in the industry. So what are the advantages? You can very well see it is very easy to understand. Still now, if you want to convey to anybody about your project, you can simply put the 2 axes and just have your activity summed up to give a good understanding. Then it's a very good summary tool. Then third point is it is very flexible. You can very well, because everybody would have used it somewhere in even in project, even in day-to-day life also. So then since it's a specified format, it is very good for repetitive project. But coming to disadvantages, you can very well imagine wherein we have thousands of activities, then having all the activities lined up like this, it cannot be managed. And further, since there is no timeline, there is no link, so it can be shifted corresponding to what suits us better. Then this front loading, what happens is every project we load certain resources, cost, everything. So what happens is we have this idea of when this particular activity is going to start, we start our resources corresponding to that, and this reusability of that particular resource, that sense does not finds due consideration. So that gets missed. Then the construction logic. If you give this Gantt chart to your foreman that you have to do things like this. For simple Gantt chart, it is fine. But when many activities gets lined up, everybody will get confused because you do not have a specified relationship ascribed to this Gantt chart. Then we had something called precedence diagram method. In precedence diagram method, we primarily have this also we would have seen the flow charts what we make. We make nodes and activities. Then the relationships, because the Gantt chart does not has this relationships. So to introduce this, we this technique was evolved wherein this relationship and activities were linked. So it is something like activity 1 is linked to activity 2. So the here simple relationship is finish to stop. So this is the general network what we do. But the demerit of this is we do not have any time access for us to monitor, like from where it has started and when it has started, when it has gone. So that data is there in the previous one, the Gantt chart, but that is not there in this precedence diagram method. So you can very well see in terms of relationships, there can be a case wherein these are independent. For example, you can say excavation at two distant fronts, which does not share any resource. It can be dependent also, like excavation and concreting. Once you have excavated, then only you can go with the concreting. Then there could be merging, like when there are two adjacent, you can say, let's take an example of bridge. You can only lay the top deck slab when your both piers, both the abutments have reached up to the pier level, not before that. So these two are done, and then only this top one comes. So that way, this activity is merged. Then there can be a burst, wherein a particular activity gets splitted into two parts. Uh, uh, this also you can see, for example, not getting it. Any activity that divides into two parts. For example, you have excavated and you want to have one short columns and one long columns adjacent to it. So this column construction can only start, these two type of column can only start after your excavation is completed. Then the other relationship what we know is something like activity A is linked to activity B, then activity C. And there can be a relationship between activity A directly related to activity C. This we can say explicit and implicit, where it is explicit and where there is implicit. For example, activity B, activity B relationship with activity C, we can say for a network of activity A to C, it's implicit. Then the other standard one is predecessor and successor. So I guess it is very well clear. Then concurrent, when things go in parallel, we call it concurrent. So the standard type of activities what we have is one is start activity and finish activity. These are called dummy activities. Then there are milestones. What are milestones? Milestones are a particular benchmark against which we monitor our project. Then there are tasks. So this is what we were discussing. For example, this this is one of the you can say wall we have to make. So footing one, wall one, footing two, wall two. So if I ask means when my this complete wall, this structure will be completed. So there can be how many approaches can it be? There can be two approaches, I guess. One is we do footing one first, then go with wall one, then go with footing two, and then go with wall two. But this way, our resource is not getting utilized properly. So the recommended would be you cast footing one, then shift your resource to footing two, then and in parallel start with wall one, and afterwards wall two. So the scheduling would be footing one with one set of resource, of course. So with one set of resource, you can very well optimize the schedule. So this, okay, this I'll skip. Now coming to network diagram. So this is the network diagram which we can make for a optimum construction time. You can very well see we start with footing one, then we started with footing two and wall one in parallel. And once this footing two is ready, then we go with wall two. But the point is, if we are doing wall two, before this wall one is completed, we have to deploy two sets of resources. And further the joints, what is there, the joint, if you can see, between wall one and wall two, this as per engineering practices, we have to have proper joints. So if we are doing these two things in parallel, this process of making this joint will be a bit cumbersome. So it is always recommended to have one set completed, then moving on to next one. Okay, now how to estimate activity time? Any idea from audience?
So we could calculate it by checking from the past records of that particular activity.
Okay, we can have it from the past experience, I can say. Other method,
Yes, sir.
other methods, other methods. One is past experience. Other methods. Other method could be backtracking it from the constant of it. For example, uh, like for a concrete, we know this is going to take this much time with a particular resource. Now, if we increase that resource corresponding to that productivity, I can arrive at that activity duration. So first thing comes intuition, experience. Second could be random guessing. Third is historical data and statistical methods. here actually what happens is we get into precedent. For example, we are asked to give a estimate that by how much time are you going to deliver this tunnel. So one way is we have this sub activities defined, and we go into arranging it in a particular network and then arrive at the project final duration. The other approach would be we can check from the database of all the tunnels having been completed with this much, approximately this strata and this dia and this length. So from there we can extrapolate and get that this activity means, I'm talking at a project level, but even at the activity level we can do that this tunnel is going to take this much time for being constructed. And further, there are
Sir,
estimating.
what is the difference between experience and historical data?
Experience is what comes from the guy who is doing the job. For example, if you ask me, I'll say I have done previous project in Srinagar, 9-meter dia in say 3 months. Now, for this project, the tunnel dia is 9 meter. So since that I have completed 500 meter, I did in 3 months. Then 10 kilometer I can do, I can have some proportionate. Historical data is not limited to my experience. It can be something like what all projects have been done in this Uttarakhand. What all projects have been done in this Uttarakhand for this much dia. So we have this database from the project completed, and from there we can track and trace. And statistical comes
sir.
when these data are very large. Means if it's something like common activities which we have to do, then we can gather something like we do for you can say if we go in a supermarket, then we any new product is launched. So everybody, if the company wants to know how their product will perform, so they conduct these sort of you can say marketing, how to say, marketing techniques, wherein they collect data from each and every individual, that what taste you like, what color you want, so something like that. So that way also it can be done. Then we have this estimating guides. Estimating guides means this schedule of rates, SOR. Every state has its own SOR, schedule of rates. And corresponding to that SOR, we get some idea that a particular cost which is being considered, comes at a certain productivity level, and that productivity level can be used to define this duration. Now, if everything is defined, why are we required to add contingencies? If yes, what could it be? Anything from audience? For
So many
example,
things could happen at the site, maybe an accident, or maybe the materials were not in proper position, or the grade of concrete wasn't sufficient for the project. So we had to break and rebuild a certain part. These kind of events might need a contingency.
yes, because everything does not happen at the ideal rate, or you can say productivity. Whatever we assume does not gels well with the actual condition. So we are required to have certain contingencies. And further, in considering a typical project requirement, say to be specific in India, there are various regulations. So for getting a regulation certified, you are required to follow certain steps or process. And there are certain processes which has to be done before having your system in place. For example, you For tunneling, you require blasting. So for blasting, you have to take permissions. The permission of blasting requires you to liaison with various district levels. So you cannot take granted time for processing at each level. There are various inherent requirements which everybody will want to be uh, closed out. And the list is so long that you cannot be sure of the particular duration. Like I'll have my permission taken within 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, something like that. So that is a bit difficult. So to account for these things which are not in our control, we add these contingencies. And further, in as discussed in tunneling, we are not sure of what we are going to encounter. We do have certain fair idea, but confidence level wise, we cannot say that I am 100% sure that this is the strata or this is the geological formation which I am going to encounter. So I have to be a bit cautious. So being cautious means adding contingencies. So these are few of the contingencies what we add, like weather, strikes, holidays, political, economic issues. Then how do we add these contingencies? Any idea? I guess the team here is of experienced faculties who have some experience also, perhaps in construction or project.
Sir, can I request you to repeat the question? Probably the net was not, very supportive for last couple of minutes.
Okay, my question is, how do we add contingencies? Do we add it for all activities, only affected activities, or as a separate activity? Because there can be three mode. You can very well say if my project comprises of three components, then I can simply say component A plus component B plus component C. This is the duration, and this is the contingencies.
When we are working on the estimate, so generally in the schedule of rates, it's already given that we add 10% contingencies to the cost that we have worked upon. Is that the answer you are looking for, sir?
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, it is also, it is a one of the mode wherein we, to summarize all the factors, we add at the last as a certain percentage. Yes, we do something like this. Because why we do it, actually why we add it separately last, not along the activities. Any hint? Okay. Why we add at the last, not all activities, is because the contingencies are not always bad. They can be of favor also. So there might be certain chances that it favors us for something, and it may be uh, at loss for certain activities. So in order to optimize or have a consolidated certain assumptions, we add it separately generally. General senses we add it separately. Okay, this would have been, if I would have been there physically, this we could have started it. I'll skip it. Okay, so let's come to the drawbacks. So what the class feels about the drawback of this Gantt chart. What are the both two systems what we are speaking here? Okay, let me clarify. The two systems what we are seeking here is one is Gantt chart and second is PDM, precision diagram method, precedence diagram method. So the drawbacks. Gantt chart, we already discussed that there is no relationship. So if activity A, B, C are something like this, and activity B has certain relationships with activity A, then if activity A is delayed, the impact of that delay over activity C is not clear in Gantt chart. And what is the drawback in precedence diagram? It does not give idea of the time element when this activity is going to start. And what will happen if it starts a day later or something like that. So what has happened? This technique called critical path method was made combining these two together. It was the integration of Gantt chart and PDM so that it covers the time component of the Gantt chart in the precedence diagram method. So it's something like, okay, it's something like we have the combination of Gantt chart and precedence diagram method with the time axis and the relationship, everything. So I guess everybody is familiar with the key dates. We call it the what can be ESA? As we can say this prefix this sub level we are having this activity description, and so we can very well say ESA is early start of activity A. Then EFA is early finish of activity A. Similarly, in similar lines, early start of activity B and early finish of activity B is there. So depending on the logic, we can arrive at the early start of activity C. So what should be it? Any guesses for the audience? Early start of activity C when these are linked by a relationship shown like this. So, okay, we'll get it later. So as discussed, there is early start date. Early start date is the earliest time activity can start without any hindrance. Then comes early finish. So we can say that early start of any activity plus the duration gives the early finish of that activity. For example, if it's this durations are not there in the presentation. Okay. So we can very well see if we are finishing an activity, say activity A in 10th month and activity B is getting finished in 8th month. When is the earliest this activity C can start? So it is the 10th month because this cannot start in 8th month, because if it starts in 8th month, this relationship between activity A and C is dishonored. So that will not happen. So this has to be the 10th month. So we can say this early start is maximum of the early finished of the previous activities. Then the late start. Late start is the flexible time by which this activity can be delayed. And same thing goes for finish. So it goes in opposite relationship. For example, the activity B can latest start by 8th and activity C can latest start by 6th. So when is this activity A going to close? Any idea? It has to be minimum. So the relationship what we Yes. I received, sorry, somebody was saying something, I interrupted. Okay. So now, since we are thorough with the, you can say the description of what early start is, what early finish is, the key dates. Because in a, you can say CPM, we have to have this relationships as well as the time axis well defined for the project. So we discussed this key dates in the start of the project. Then the second component comes the relationships. So relationship, I guess everybody is familiar. There are four categories of relationship. It start with the finish to start. When the predecessor finishes, then only the successor can start. And another relation can be start to start. We call it a activities going in parallel. Then there is a relationship which wherein we go in finish to finish. Then start to finish. So further, there can be three types of relationship for each category. Uh, I guess class is familiar with these techniques. Let's have this three types of each category. What more relationship we can attribute to this basics relationship? What can be the other attributes we can assign to these relationships? Anybody? Okay. This relationship we call it as lags. One is no lag, means predecessor and successor can follow one of the previous relationship and start with zero lag. Then what can be other one? Positive lag and negative lag. The purpose of positive lag is wherein there are certain, for example, we are laying concrete and above that concrete means a column is there and above that column we have to cast a beam. So your column has to reach the sufficient strength. We call it, prescribe it minimum 15 days for removing the props. And in general, we follow this 28 days. So for loading that column with the load of a beam. So your relationship will entail having a positive lag of around 28 days for the successive lifts to come up. And further, there can be a negative lag. Any example of negative lag? Any example of negative lag? Negative lag? Okay, no issues. Uh, for negative lag, I can refer to something called in the construction sequence when we get into certain activities which can start in parallel, but certain enabling works needs to be done, and these enabling works can be done in parallel, but the concreting will start after a certain period of time. Okay, of this, which is the relationship which is very less in use? We generally do not use it to more frequently than others. Anybody? Out of these four relationships, which is the most uncommon or most least number of times which is used? Hello? Is audience still there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's a
Yeah.
start finish relationship, sir.
Yes, yes. This is the start-finish relationship. Why is it not that frequent in use? Any idea? Any idea why start-finish relationship is not that common in use?
Sir, because two activities can proceed simultaneously without having to finish one before we start the other. Mostly that happens like.
The simple logic is because we start our project from a particular zero, matlab lowest time scale and move on to the highest time scale. So if we go into this start finish, then we are creating confusions. But I'll tell you, there are few structures wherein this is important, and you cannot skip with it. I'll tell you one of the live examples in from my project. Actually, here we are required to build a tunnel and cross passages. So you can very well see the tunnels as I already discussed. My tunnel is around for TBM portion, it's around 10 kilometers, and at every 150 to 200 meter we have this cross passages. So when I am scheduling this complete project for monitoring or for having you can say the time uh, having a time to arrive at. I have to model this cross passage and tunnel together. And there are the number of cross passages as already discussed. These are very, uh, these are roughly around 118 plus 44 plus 56. It's roughly around 300 numbers. So having this means these 300 numbers modeled in Primavera or anything is going to be very time consuming, and further the relationship has to be because um, everybody will appreciate the Primavera or the basic tools what we have, this MSP Primavera for scheduling. It follows a particular trend wherein a particular activity can be modeled in a particular stretch. But in tunnels, what happens is if I have to model my cross passages along with the tunnel, so I have to break my tunnel in that many parts. So making tunnel, you can very well imagine having this 10-kilometer tunnel segregated into 100-meter stretches is not an easy job. Having that modeled and following that religiously is very difficult for monitoring purposes. So what we do is for cross passage, we simple follow a logic that when this my cross passage, I'll start when there is a certain lag from the finish of my tunnel. For example, my tunnel is going to be finished in 12th month. So I'll say I'll start with cross passage 3 months before the finish of this one tunnel. So in that case, other than SF, no relationship fits better. Hope my point was clear. Okay, so moving forth. So for having a representation of activity in a CPM method or a proper precedence diagram method, what we call it, this is what I have been taught from my professor to follow, and I feel that it is of great use for others also, and it should be because it gives a complete information about the attributes of a particular activity in a relationship, and all parameters are covered in it. So what I have been taught and what I convey down the line and to whosoever circle I go in is this sort of description for any activity. So it's better to have this activity name and duration in the center, have the early start in one corner, straight down, late start, then early finish at the other end, then late finish at the bottom down. Then any float, this activity number or free float, I can capture here. Then total float I can capture here. This helps me have a better understanding of the relationship and the float and the attributes of a particular activities for getting more uh, better planning and relationships. So this is the algorithm what we follow for having this, you can say this CPM network diagram. So first is having a clear and logical diagram, then have the duration, then we get into a forward pass. Forward pass, we call it, we start from 0 to end. Then when we reach to the end, then we get backwards and arrive at the various key dates what we discussed. Then these floats are determined, and then we check for this critical path, the path wherein the floats are 0. So this is the general step what we follow. It's something like this. The attributes what we discussed, it starts with the relationship, everything is modeled. Then you can very well see this is activity A, then it has this duration assigned here, activity C, same way. So if we are required to work out all the parameters what I discussed in the previous slide, we follow that method. So for example, like forward pass, we start with 0, then activity A has to start. Activity A and activity B are going to be in parallel. So the the early start of these two has to be 0 because there is no other relationship. Then we add this 3 month to have this late finish. Then similarly here we add 4 for this late finish, and thus we start from start and go to the finish by following the rule wherein the preceding activity has to start when the successive activity has to start when all preceding has been completed. So following that logic, we get into this forward pass method and arrive at the this end date. Then once we arrive at end date, what we do is we shift this finish into bottom, this triangle square. Then we trace everything backwards corresponding to the relationship. And then we have this beautiful network diagram, and all this floats, everything is worked out, and these are put corresponding to the relationship what we have. And the path wherein there is no, there is a 0 total float, that is considered as the critical path. Coming to floats, this will be the last topic for today's discussion. So we have this many types of floats. One is free float, the total floats, interfering float, independent floats, start float, finish float. I guess the class is familiar with all this type of floats. Just I'll have a brief description of it. I will not get into detail. So what is free float? Anybody from audience? Okay. So the free float is something wherein a particular activity can be shifted without affecting anything. So it is the primarily the difference between the early start and the latest start, or early finish and the latest finish. So by you can say the explanation what we say, it is the amount of time by which an activity can delay, but uh, not delay the termination of the project or the start of any following activities. So it's minimum early start of the successive activity minus early finish of uh, previous activities. So let's have from class, what is the free float for A? Uh, I understand everybody seeing the screen. We have this sort of relationship. So what can we expect as A's free float? Anybody? Let's get back to the definitions. The definition is free float is the amount of time an activity can delay but not delay the termination of the project, nor delay the start of any following activities. So what logic we are following is activity A can start. Yes, I heard certain some response, but I guess it didn't went through proper. Anybody in audience? Anybody in office? Anybody in audience? What is the free float for A in this network? Sadika ma'am?
I was just trying to, sir, link these numbers that are written in the boxes. Probably that will help us to arrive at the answer.
Okay, let me explain. Here the activity name is A, duration is 2, early start is 2, and early finish is 4, latest start is 5, and latest finish is 7.
So then, will it be B2? Because there, the latest finish here can be 7. There we find 7. Is that the float for this?
No, 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 no.
Not like that. Okay.
No, 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 no. We are speaking here about the A's free float. If we go by the definition, it's the flexibility in you can very well remember this as flexibility in starting or finishing A without hampering B and C. Anybody from audience?
Free float is 1, sir.
Free float is 1. How you arrived at 1?
Sort of 1 or 2, maybe.
Now let me get back to the definition. Yeah. Free float is the amount of time an activity can delay but not delay the termination of the project, nor delay the start of any following activities. Now let me get back to the, how you arrived at 1?
सर सिंस बी का जो अर्ली स्टार्ट टाइम है वो 5 है और ए का अर्ली फिनिश टाइम 4 है, सो दोनों का जो मिनिमम होगा मतलब माइनस करके जो निकलेगा वो 1 आएगा।
4, 5.
But sir, again, the activity is connected with C, na? So
Mhm.
again, there are chances of 2, na, 6
बट
minus 4.
बट सर सिक्स का अर्ली जो स्टार्टिंग टाइम है वो 6
Mhm.
है, बी का सी का जो अर्ली स्टार्टिंग टाइम है वो 6 है और बी का जो अर्ली स्टार्टिंग टाइम है 5 है। अगर हम फ्री फ्लोट ज्यादा रख देंगे, 2 का रख देंगे, तो 4 प्लस 2 जो है वो 6 हो जाएगा, यानी कि बी की एक्टिविटी जो है वो ऑल्टर हो जाएगी, इसलिए हम उसको जो है 1 ही का दे सकते हैं फ्री फ्लोट।
Correct. Correct. So by following, my screen is coming, na? So if we go by the simple formula also, na, it simply states minimum of this latest, early finish, early start of successive activity minus the latest finish or early finish of the this activity. So this is B, it is 5 minus 4, and for C it would be 6 minus 4. So there is here it is 1 and 2. So out of this 1 and 2, the minimum one has to be there for the free float, because by one day A can move forward. If it finishes by 5 also, there is no difference in either B or C. But if we finish it by 6, say, so then your B activity will be hampered because it has to start on 5. So it one day is the flexibility by which it will get shifted. So the free float is 1. So now coming to the total float. So the total float is the amount of time an activity can delay but not delay the termination of project. Okay, what is the difference between total and free? Anybody?
Sir, the free float might would not delay the immediate next activity in line, and total float could affect the next activity, but overall time is not delayed. The overall project is not delayed.
Matlab, it is primarily the duration by which this particular activity can get delayed or start late or something like that. So as the
Yes, sir.
definition suggests, it is simply pertaining to that particular activity. So in this case, in this network, what should be the A's total float? Asmit?
Yes, sir.
What would be the total float for A in this network?
Sir, 2.
No, not two. Any further
Sir,
guesses? Mr. Viren? Mr. Viren, are you there? Akash? Mr. Akash? What is the total float for A? Mr. Akash, you are there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm not getting the answer, sir.
Just go by the basic definition. The free float is the float or the flexibility a particular activity has without interfering with the total project duration. Means the A can be delayed or has the flexibility to move a bit further up. If A is having the early start as 2, early finish as 4, late start as 5, late finish as 7. What could be the total float for A?
Sir, is it 5?
Is it 3, sir?
Sorry, who? Come again?
Sir, this
I
is
said
Gururaj from
5.
MIT. Is it 3, sir?
It's 3. It's 3. For A, it's 3. It is very well clear because the early start for A activity is 2. The latest start is 5. So that means it has the flexibility of 3 days. Clear? Okay, and then let's have for B, Mr. Gururaj.
It's 2, sir.
Yes, sir. It's
Yes.
2. It's 2, sir.
Yes, it should be. Okay, so I guess it's clear. So this is what we were discussing. So the total float for A is 5 minus 2, this latest start minus early start. So 3. So it is always advisable to follow the basic logic instead of mugging up the formulas, because formulas sometimes gets into confusion and makes anybody more methodical. Instead of having the proper mind or logic being applied, why a particular thing is happening, something like is there. Clear? Then coming to interfering floats. So what could be the interfering floats? Interfering floats are primarily like in a network. If you have, like in the previous example, this A, B, and C, like this network, simple network we are following. Yeah. So for B and C, there are certain delays. Means you can very well see B has float of 2 days, C has float of 3 days, and the this free float is also in the same lines what we discussed. So the interfering floats are when you can imagine it in a way that we have two activities going in parallel, uh, but something happens and these two are delayed, and consequently the successive activities which is going to come after these two will also get delayed. So that sort of delay logic will get into interfering float. Uh, like its simple formula is total float minus free float. You can very well see that the previous relationship which will come as a network diagram, yeah, it's same only. The activity A, what we are discussing, activity A can start a bit 3 days later without interfering anything. Is it clear? And it has got 1 day flexibility, by which if it gets shifted, B and C are not going to be affected. So the interfering float in this case will be, what would be the interfering float for A in this regard? Mr. Gururaj,
Sir,
what would be the interfering float for A? I guess you were there with us when we were discussing total float, free float. Now, as
yes,
we
sir.
have
Yes, sir.
come to interfering float, the previous slide I have shown the relationship or the impact what interfering float has. So what will be the interfering float for activity A? What was the total float for A?
It's 3, sir.
A it was 3.
Total float was 3.
Yeah.
Is it 1, sir?
1 for
1 for
Uh,
activity A.
1 for activity A. 1 was free float, no? 1 was free float.
Sir, is it 5 interfering float?
No.
No.
Uh, yes. Yes. Who said 2?
This is Devesh Kushwaha.
Yeah. Devish, Mr. Devish. Yeah. It's
Sir,
2.
I have said the two. Jitendra Vankar over here, sir.
Okay. Good. Good. That's
Sir,
correct. That's correct.
basically, we can also interpret interfering float as a slick difference at the tail.
Yes.
This will be the eventually the difference between the total float and the free float. So 5
Yes.
7 minus 5, that will be the slack difference at the activity number, event number A2.
Correct. Correct. Okay.
And okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I guess everybody is clear with what is interfering float. So same thing goes for independent floats. What is independent float? Conceptual level, any definition we can have from audience?
Sir,
Independent
is
float.
it, yes, sir, this is Guru Raj here. So is it earliest start time of a successor activity minus the latest finish time of a predecessor activity?
And further the
Minus the
duration.
duration of the activity, yes.
Yes. It is something in that line. This independent float is the time an activity might delay and not delay the termination of the project, not delay the start of any following activities, and not be delayed by any preceding activities. Because if it is something like it is sandwiched, it is something like sandwiched. Means A is connected to B, B is connected to C. So it's something pertaining to B. B activity can oscillate or move in the floats available as of finishing of A and starting of C. Is class getting me? Like there are 3 activities A, B, and C. Every activities are linked. So the independent float is something flexibility what activity B has in moving between the floats available in finishing of A and starting of C. It's something like this. So you can see C is connected to A and B, and as a successor D and E. So this C, if you complete the network diagram, you'll see that it has flexibility. This starting point of C and the end point of C. It is a bit flexible because this end point of C will be less than this 20. It's something like that if I draw it over a time diagram. So my C is linked to A, B, D, and E. You can very well see A finishes at 14, B finishes at 16, D starts at 20, E starts at 22. So my activity C can move between 16 and 20. Clear? So this is the total independent float what this activity has with respect to others or with respect to the network. So what is the independent float for C from this diagram? Anybody in class? Devesh? So Devesh?
Is it
Mr.
0,
Devesh?
sir?
No, just see it once more. Just see it once more. Just see it once more. This activity C has this flexibility of being situated between 18 and 20. So
2
it
days,
is
sir.
2 days clearly, है ना? So this is the independent float. So then there are standard start float and finish float, which is the difference between the early start and early finish. Early and later, what we were discussing. Okay, so this is the floats, what we were discussing. So this, I guess I have some time, I guess. So what is the difference between start to finish, then this finish float and total float? Aren't these all three looking similar? Okay, let me answer. It is with respect to the network, the differences, what these floats are bringing it up. Okay, so we will not get into this class exercise. Thank you. Now, questions from the audience.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, this is Gururaj from MIT Mysore, Karnataka. It was really a very good session. So we got clear regarding the floats and all these things. So my question is, what is the application difference between the bar chart and milestone chart, sir?
See, if I have to do anything really quick and have everything lined up with no anticipated or lag or interferences, then bar chart is simply I'll put the time axis, start activity A will start from a particular time, then activity B will take it up. And what the second thing what you told was?
Milestone charts.
Milestones chart. Milestone chart, you can say it governs the finish or start of a particular project, but it does not gives you the duration of the activity, because milestones are not defined for all activities. If you see in a particular project, the parameters by which client or any guy in planning will like to monitor is your milestones, finished milestones, so that the necessary preparedness can be checked, but they do not do it for all activities. You are getting me? Because you are not
Yes, sir.
having
Yes, sir.
all activities start and finish. If you have that, then it is similar to your bar chart.
Bar chart or Gantt. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But generally, we do not follow this for all activities. We go for major one, and that too either start or finish. The point which will make my decision impending or requirement. For example, I am doing a powerhouse. Then I have to order my turbine. So I need to have a certain idea by when is the civil works going to be over at a particular level, so that I will get my turbine come at that place in that particular time. Because if I am moving it a bit earlier, I have to have this warehouse store for stacking it. You are getting me? But if
Yes, sir.
that
Yes, sir.
point of time is defined for me, I will simply have certain contingency added and plan to bring my turbine in that part during the civil works. Because after I do the civil works, since in most of the structures, this E&M and this MEP work have to be done in stages. It cannot be like you hand over me entire civil and I will start my MEP work for electrical from scratch. Just the thing.
Thank you, sir. Thank
you. Sir, I wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, you were mentioning about the escrow account earlier. So who owns this escrow account?
Primarily ownership is with client only, but it's a joint account with this rights of disbursement and everything well defined.
Okay, so which means the contractor and the party who is getting the project executed, both of them jointly own the account.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Sir, there is a question in the chat box. Any relationship between task, work, and schedule?
Okay. Task, work, and schedule. Let's go by the basic definition. What do you mean by task? Okay, let me answer. Task is the very basic level of doing things. Means, for example, you can say like excavation I am doing. So the basic, very basic activity could be, task could be excavator digging the ground. Work, you can say work is excavation. Schedule is which activity to follow which. I hope my response is clear.
Yes, sir.
It's
So,
something
anybody
like
else have any questions? Yes, sir, please.
it's something like you basically define the basic elements and then you build it up to serve your requirement.
Sorry, sir, I couldn't get it.
It is something like it's the defining the basic elements and then building it up or to serve the requirement for monitoring and control.
Okay, sir.
Any further questions?
Any questions from audience? How can we control the delay in the project? How can we control delay in the project? Mukesh is asking this question.
Okay. Okay, sir, good afternoon. Okay, sir. So how can we control the delay in the project? See, the delays in a project are attributable to various kinds. There are many parameters. Which constitutes the delay. So what we generally do in a typical project is we define or identify the delay causing elements, the stakeholders, the guys who is responsible for a particular delay, and that is categorized and on the basis of the various contracts, you can say contract management or the basic systems in place in a particular project. These are mitigated because since everybody has very huge stakes involved in it, there are defined responsibilities uh, of in terms of handing over, taking over, inspection, everything is there, and that is guided by a schedule. So once we follow the schedule dedicatedly and have these delays properly attributable and controllable, because there are certain things which we call as warnings. When because we are experienced, and anybody who's doing a job is experienced and has a precedent of doing such things in the past. So the learnings what we have got, that needs to be shared with the project's owner also. For example, something which pertains to design, because in a particular project for a particular duration, a particular element has to be constituted. So once that is in place, then everything is can be geared up. We can guide the owners well in advance that you follow this, otherwise you'll be delayed. And something bad happens or something adverse thing comes, you should have proper mechanism to address it in terms of technically handling it and contractually getting the reimbursement. It is a very vast you can say it is very vast subject to be covered in 5 minutes or so. Mukesh sir, I guess how to plan any pipeline laying road project job, CPM not showing would give better results. Okay. See, there are CPM is there, but there are various other tools which anybody means it is there in the market. For example, we have this programming called linear time distance diagrams. So this time distance diagram is one of the components which is very useful for a linear project. We call it pipe laying, we call it a road project, we call it tunneling, we call it road tunnel or transmission line, everything wherein everything happens in a sequential manner. This time distance diagram is one of the very good and tested and verified tool to be used, wherein you have this chainage time axis vertically down and distance axis on a horizontal level. If time permits, I will like to show you one which I got it made for my project here. It's a basic how it resembles. I'll try to show the audience. It's very interesting.
हेलो नीरज सर।
Yes, sir.
हाँ मुकेश सर आपके एलएनटी में वर्क कर चुके हैं 15-16 years इज हैविंग एक्सपीरियंस।
Yes. I remember him, sir. I remember him. He's from
he was in Faridabad. He was in Faridabad,
Yes.
Mukesh Dubey.
Yes, is my screen coming now, sir?
So any other question or any other question from any participant, or let us finish this session. It was really very informative, very elaborative, very good session, sir. And you have told us in a very good way. And I hope every participant must have enjoyed this your session. Thank you so much. What are you showing, sir?
Yes, the time distance diagram what we were discussing. It's something
Please.
like this. It's something
Please,
like this. I will not get into detail, but it's something like this. You can see very well. It's
Okay.
for our project only. It's right now in draft stage, so I will not be discussing it. Just simply showing the tools what we were discussing now. So we have on the top, you can see this kilometers are there. So it is the chain distance we call it.